The desert looks empty at first glance, a stretch of sand and rocks so vast it seems untouched by time. But that illusion fades the longer you stand there. Heat presses down like a physical weight. The horizon wavers and bends. Sound travels strangely, carried by wind that never seems to rest. This is where the training began, long before the first boots hit Iraqi soil. Long before the first convoy rolled through unfamiliar streets. For thousands of soldiers, this was the place where war first introduced itself. Not through gunfire, but through exhaustion, confusion, and the relentless demand to adapt or fail. In the months and years leading up to the Iraq War, deserts in the American Southwest became stand-ins for a faraway land. Most soldiers knew only through briefings and satellite images. Places like Fort Irwin's National Training Center in California and the vast ranges of Arizona and Nevada transformed into living rehearsals for combat. Entire towns were built from plywood and concrete. Roads were carved into the sand. Role players learned Arabic phrases and local customs. Everything was designed to feel real, because soon enough, it would be. Training here was not about comfort or convenience. It was about stripping away illusions. Soldiers arrived thinking they understood hardship, only to discover how little they knew about sustained heat, dehydration, and the mental toll of endless visibility where there was nowhere to hide. The desert punished mistakes immediately. A missed water refill meant dizziness and blurred vision. A poorly secured weapon filled with sand. A lapse in attention could turn a routine patrol into chaos. Days began before sunrise, when the air was briefly cool and the sky stretched wide and pale. By mid-morning, temperatures climbed fast, turning body armor into a furnace. Sweat soaked uniforms within minutes, then dried almost as quickly, leaving behind salt and stiffness. Every movement required effort. Every decision had consequences. Instructors watched closely, not to coddle, but to expose weaknesses while there was still time to fix them. This training was shaped by hard lessons learned in earlier conflicts. The U.S. military knew that Iraq would not resemble the jungles of Vietnam or the mountains of Afghanistan. It would be urban and open, modern and ancient at the same time. Enemies would not always wear uniforms. Threats would emerge from crowds, doorways, and roadside debris. The desert training environment became a testing ground for a new kind of warfare. One that blurred lines between combatant and civilian and demanded constant judgment under pressure. Convoys rolled through mock villages where children played soccer one moment, and chaos erupted the next. Explosions, simulated but jarring, sent shockwaves through vehicles. Smoke filled the air. Screams echoed from somewhere just out of sight. Medics practiced treating wounds while sand clung to gloves and sweat blurred their vision. Leaders learned how fast a situation could spiral and how calm, or panic, spread through a unit like fire. For many soldiers, this was their first taste of fear tied to responsibility. They were not just responsible for themselves, but for the lives riding in the vehicles beside them. Mistakes here were lessons. Mistakes overseas would be tragedies. The desert did not care about rank or experience. It tested everyone equally, from brand new privates to seasoned officers. The mental strain was as intense as the physical. Sleep came in fragments. Training cycles ran day and night, deliberately disrupting routines. Soldiers learned to function while exhausted, hungry, and overloaded with information. Radios crackled constantly. Orders changed without warning. Confusion was intentional. War, they were told, rarely followed a script. Somewhere in the middle of it all, bonds formed that would last a lifetime. Shared misery has a way of stripping people down to who they really are. In the desert, there was no room for ego. You learned quickly who you could trust to carry extra weight, who would crack a joke at the right moment, who stayed calm when everything went wrong. These relationships became lifelines later, when the training scenarios gave way to real missions. The desert also forced soldiers to confront the environment itself as an adversary. Sandstorms rolled in without warning, swallowing visibility and turning the world into a brown haze. Vehicles broke down more often. Weapons required constant cleaning. Electronics failed under heat stress. Every problem became a lesson in improvisation. You learned to adapt because there was no alternative. Instructors pushed realism to uncomfortable extremes. Civilians shouted accusations. Interpreters argued. Local leaders demanded respect. Soldiers had to navigate cultural differences while maintaining security. One wrong move could turn a crowd hostile. These moments were designed to teach restraint as much as aggression. Winning hearts and minds was not a slogan here. It was a skill, practiced repeatedly under stress. For some, the desert training stirred doubts they had never voiced before. Late at night, lying on cots or on the bare ground, soldiers stared at the stars and wondered what awaited them overseas. They thought about families back home, about how different life felt just months earlier. Training for war forced them to confront the possibility of not coming back the same, or not coming back at all. Veterans of previous wars often recognized the look in their eyes. It was the moment when the idea of war stopped being abstract. The desert did that. It closed the distance between imagination and reality. It made the future feel closer, heavier. Historically, armies have always used harsh environments to prepare for conflict. Roman legions marched long distances with full gear. World War II troops trained in deserts before North Africa. The logic was simple. If you could survive the worst conditions, you could survive anything. But the Iraq-era training added a new layer, one shaped by modern technology and unpredictable enemies. Drones buzzed overhead. GPS devices guided patrols. At the same time, soldiers were taught to function without them because technology could fail. As the training cycles progressed, units began to move with greater confidence. Commands became sharper. Reactions quicker. Mistakes still happened, but recovery was faster. Leaders learned when to push and when to pull back. The desert had a way of revealing leadership styles. Some cracked under pressure. Others found strengths they didn't know they had. The role players were often immigrants or native speakers who brought authenticity to the scenarios. They argued passionately, laughed, pleaded, and protested. Their presence reminded soldiers that real people live in the environments they would soon enter. Not every interaction would be hostile. Not every threat would be obvious. The training reinforced a truth that no briefing slide could capture. War was as much about people as it was about tactics. By the end of a rotation, soldiers were thinner, tougher, and quieter. The desert stripped away excess. There was less complaining, less posturing. Fatigue had leveled the field. In its place was a sense of readiness that came not from confidence, but from acceptance. They knew it would be hard. They knew things would go wrong, and they knew they could endure it. Departure day always felt strange. Gear was packed with mechanical precision. Vehicles lined up. Orders were repeated. The desert, which had felt so hostile at first, now seemed almost familiar. Some soldiers felt a strange gratitude toward it. It had hurt them, humbled them, and prepared them. Others couldn't wait to leave, eager to put the training behind them and face the real mission. When they eventually landed in Iraq, many recognized echoes of the training immediately. The heat, the dust, the long stretches of tension broken by moments of chaos. Not everything matched the simulations, but enough did that reactions felt instinctive. Hands moved without conscious thought. Commands came faster. Fear was still there, but it was not paralyzing. They had been here before, in a way. Looking back, veterans often describe desert training as the beginning of the war for them. Not the official start, not the first firefight, but the moment they understood what was being asked of them. The desert did not glorify war. It revealed its cost. It demanded sacrifice before any enemy was encountered. For those who never deployed, the training still left a mark. It taught resilience. It changed how they viewed themselves and the world. The desert has a way of doing that even in peace. It exposes limits and forces growth. Years later, the mock villages have been rebuilt and reused. New generations cycle through. The sand remains, indifferent and patient. Each group arrives with fresh faces and leaves with a deeper understanding of what it means to be tested. The desert never fired a shot, but for countless soldiers, it was the place where war first looked them in the eye and asked if they were ready.